Good morning, and welcome to another ironic introduction to another video. Today, I'm going to be talking about why I think Cull Obsidian is going to change the way higher tier Alliance War is played. Now, Alliance War is already kind of like setting up paths, communicating at higher tiers, and really working as a group in order to make sure you do a full clear, take the boss down. And Cull Obsidian brings so much when it comes to clearing out an Alliance War just because of his massive amount of damage, the fact that he gets True Strike automatically, the just ability to stun, and his synergies just being incredibly powerful because of the champion roster you get to pick from as your synergies. A lot of times people will take kind of like subpar synergies to boost one champion, and I really feel like Cull Obsidian doesn't have to do that. So the reason I think he's going to be incredibly insane as far as like changing the way Alliance War is done is because of the fact that he builds charges, persistent charges by knocking out champions, can build an additional charge by knocking out an Avenger, and build charges by staying above 95% and not having his combo meter reset. So what that I think that allows is for some communication, right? So essentially what you do is you set your Cull Obsidian player to be your anchor, right? Or you prep them by butting them up. So instead of having like one backup, you set them up on an alternate route and you trust that your players can clear their routes on their own. And the way I would do this is you would have one player say go in and scout, right? And they find a tech champion, or they find an Avenger if possible. They jump into that fight, and if you're confident your Cull Obsidian player can win the fight without taking 5% HP, you don't have to worry about this mechanic. But one option would be to go in, knock that champion down a whole lot of HP, and have your Cull Obsidian player go in and finish the fight, right? Because then they start with this huge advantage. They can just like, you could bring them down to like 4%. And yeah, you're forcing a death, but you're boosting your Cull Obsidian player a lot. And you might not need that extra persistent charge, but like if you say find a Iron Man Infinity War on an early node, you could have Cull Obsidian walk in with Corvus Glaive as a synergy. You get to knock out a champion, knock out an Avenger, plus the path setup from your ally. You could get this knock out a champion above 95%. And in that manner, you get 4 charges right off the gate. And it's just, you could technically go and do the Ebony Maw and the Thanos one as well for a 5th charge, but I think that extra slot is better used elsewhere, which I'll describe going further. But in this manner, 4 charges right out the gate, plus I believe you start with 1, means you get your True Strike ability buff instantly. So you're already halfway there early on. So that means that I think that a lot of people, I would highly recommend against sticking tech or Avengers early on in the paths now. You're definitely if you want to use them as defenders, because some of them are amazing defenders, specifically like Iron Man Infinity War. You're going to want to put them farther back because you don't want Cull Obsidians to be able to take that charge early on and then just clear the whole path by abusing that. And so in this way, there's like some communication, path scouting, and prepping. And when I say path scouting, what I mean is literally scouting. There's a mastery that you can take, and I think that this is incredibly valuable for Alliance War in particular, called Scouter Lens, where you literally reveal hidden heroes and their star ratings, and using their ratings and their hero rating, you can kind of gauge who the champion is going to be, even though it's got a question mark on it. Granted, there's some kind of number gauging there with, awakened abilities and max sigs, but especially at the higher tiers, you can assume that the champions are max ranked, max leveled, just because that makes for the best kind of defense. And in this way, you can really just prep Cull Obsidians going in. And granted, you don't really double up on the paths a whole lot, but just being able to double up a little bit, you can really abuse that path scouting mechanic, in my opinion, which I'm sure it's already getting abused as is. But that said, other champions like Ghost, they have to run typically like subpar synergy champions where you really just boost Ghost to use it. And that there's balance, right? Ghost is OP as is, but you don't have like that great of a backup line if you mess up with Ghost. But that said, Cull Obsidian, I feel, doesn't have that problem, right? You've got Corvus Glaive, Proxima Midnight, who are incredibly powerful. So if you take them to boost your persistent charge, you have a great backup right behind as is, and neither of those require any like major buildup. You can just stick them in and then run them if you make a mistake. So you're not suffering from gaining that tech knockout. The reason I don't comment about Ebony Maw is he's not out yet. So maybe that's a great option, and it would give you class versatility. So if he's great, I think that just even boosts Cull Obsidian even more. But I do get the sense that Ebony Maw will be a better defender, so I don't think you'll be using this one in particular. But my major thing is his other synergies across the board, right? When you take one of these, and the thing is that the arguable counters to Cull Obsidians are like poison and bleed nodes, right? Because he doesn't have any immunities, as well as like nullify abilities for Mystic champions or like Rogue and Loki, who can steal steal buffs. I don't know how Loki interacts with Cull Obsidian, but I hope there's an interaction there just to kind of like broaden the list. And obviously, Cull Obsidian is cosmic, and so you're not going to be bringing him into Mystic fights. And what makes this so incredibly powerful, I feel, is you say, okay, well, what if you force Tech Champions and Avengers on the Poison and Bleed paths, right? Well, if Cull Obsidian wants to take that path and his Alliance members have already scouted it out, he gets to bring Hulk Ragnarok, who responds to Poison and Bleed with Face Me and just completely face Rex through them, and you still get to maximize synergy bonuses. He also, let's say, you decide to bait him, right? You set up a Tech Avenger early on in one of the paths that isn't Poison and Bleed, and then you stack it with Mystics. I mean, not only is Hulk Ragnarok already a good option, but you could respond with Captain America Infinity War. Let's say you stack the path with rogues or mutants who could respond, like Omega Red or more. I'm not, super versed in the champions yet, so those are the only two I can think of at the moment. You can respond with Iron Man Infinity War, and you're still gaining these great synergy bonuses in addition to your Cull Obsidian. And I don't feel like he needed to have this amazing roster. Like, I think he could have been just as powerful if you had left these synergies at Hulkbuster and Hulk, and if you had left these synergies down here at like Heimdall, Thor Ragnarok, as well as the bottom four I feel are subpar, except for the Doctor Strange. Like, I don't think he needed to have a synergy with Iron Man Infinity War, Captain America Infinity War. I think that was just unnecessary. Not to mention, I know this is basic, but at least Corvus Glaive and Proximal Midnight run into the same kinds of counters as Cull Obsidian, with the relatively Poison and Bleed for them, as well as Mystics having the class advantage and nullify abilities, etc. I just don't feel like having the ability to stick a science or a tech incredibly strong attacker into your lineup is something that he really needed, because he's already able to clear entire paths on his own. And I know that Alliance Wars at higher tiers is about full clearing the map. Alliances are already doing that, and it really comes down to defender diversity, as well as it comes down to how many people died along the way, as well as maybe mistakes. But I just feel like Cull Obsidian is this one shoe fits all solution. With if he doesn't fit the shoe, you get to just run insane synergies on the side to fit the shoe in order to save you. And I just feel like there's not a whole lot of counterplay when it comes to this. I would make the argument that what we really need is maybe attacker diversity in order to prevent people from just stacking Cull Obsidians and bringing this, because I really feel like even people going in frontline, they can just stick Cull Obsidian and then run synergies along the way in order to clear through, and then mix and match it up depending on what nodes you're trying to take down. But as far as altering the way I think Alliance War is played, I think we'll see anti-Cull Obsidian bosses, right? So the Alliance War Defender tier list, we might see increase in champions who specifically nullify buffs, just because that way people aren't really able to maximize on a Cull Obsidian into that final boss. I would love to see the champion get an added thing where he gets bonuses against Cull Obsidian, just because I feel like the champion would recognize him as one of the world's greatest fighters. Just small things like that. I think that as a meta defense, the thing I mentioned where you bait with a tech champion / an Avenger and then stack the path with Cull Obsidian counters. So that way, even though they have Cull Obsidian in their kit, they either have to choose between using one of the counters they've brought in their synergy team or using Cull Obsidian. And then he gets to the final boss and he doesn't have any persistent charges built up. So you do neutralize him that way. But that's kind of a high investment, and it depends on really how deep are you really trying to respond to one champion in particular. And that's not really ideal in any way, shape, or form. But meta defense is a thing. And not to mention a lot of the nodes, there's already built in counters just based on the map itself. I just think that these added thoughts with the power level of Cull Obsidian alone really will get alliances forced into like adding these extra thoughts when they do defender placement, as well as when you attack, prepping. Maybe you have two players who are incredibly active and have the free time in order to coordinate accordingly. I just think that it's going to affect the way the game is played. I think it's neat. I think that this is good for the game in the long run, but maybe not great for Alliance War right now, as it might set up some cheese strategies in the short term. But having this kind of thought in what is arguably the only competitive like gameplay in Marvel Contest of Champions, I think it adds a lot of complexity, and more champions that force this kind of like complex thought and reactions to defense as well as attack, I think really adds a lot of value to the competitive play. It makes it more fun, it makes it more competitive, and it makes it more interesting, minus the tons and tons of Cull Obsidian fights we'll see on YouTube as a result. But that said, if you feel different, or you think that this guy doesn't curb stomp Alliance War the way I think he does, feel free to let me know. I'd love to learn more. I don't claim to know everything, because I know I'm a beginner, and I know that there's a lot more I need to know in the game. I can't even say I've done higher maps. I struggle alone in my Alliance War as is. And not to say skill alone is going to be a huge factor here, but I do know that I think those higher tier alliances don't have a problem when it comes to that. But feel free to start a debate. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this, because I really think that Alliance War has so much depth to it that I really want to get into it, because it looks really fun. And I am secretly a very competitive player, so having that competitive option is something I'm really looking forward to. But I think I've talked enough, so I'll talk to you later.